And good evening, everyone. Welcome to our fourth and last Subday of Advent. And it's a bit of a special night for several reasons. It is our season finale of season 1. It is over after tonight, and we also made affiliate on D-Live, so we can have members. So now we can have sparks.
Yes, we did. We made affiliate, and we have subscribers, and you are sparks, and it's wonderful. We hope we can have a few of you who would decide to become sparks and supporters. We will be really appreciative of that. Hello.
Definitely. Hello, Damdami and Stephen O. It is good to see you.
Yes. Very good to see the familiar faces in chat.
Yeah.
I'm just checking on the YouTube chat as well. So yeah. Today.
I'm sorry, I have a bit of an audio problem, actually.
Oh, you do? Okay.
No,
it's a little bit muffled. I can hear you quite okay, actually.
No, it was me. I had forgotten to take something off my audio program in the background, so it should be good.
Okay.
Thank you, Burika, for hosting, and Merry Christmas.
Yes. Oh, Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy Yule, indeed.
God Jul.
You know, blessed Yule, as I think they say.
Yeah, in
Winter
Norway.
Solstice tomorrow.
Yeah, in Norway and in Scandinavia in general, it's God Jul. So God is good, and
blessed
Jul is
as I think
Jul.
they say.
Yeah, we know that too. That as well. And we have Cameron McDade and Chief Moody on YouTube. Good to see you.
Hi, Chief Moody. Hi, Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is everybody excited for Christmas? Well, it might be a bit of a question to ask, really, in Britain. I don't know about other places, but yes, I know a lot of us are very frustrated right now.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. I've been quite busy today, so I'm not fully updated if anything has happened here today, but I don't know of any harsh restrictions over here, at least. So
no.
Fingers crossed it will stay that way.
It's quite rude of COVID to agree to be nice for Christmas and then renegade on that bargain, apparently.
Yeah, I think Father Christmas should have a very sharp word with him, and perhaps bring some of his companions who are less nice and have a sharp word with COVID.
He's been a naughty virus.
Oh yeah, definitely. And thank you for the ice cream, Stephen O. That is very kind of you.
Indeed.
Thank you.
So we do have a few stories tonight. We have one about Father Christmas himself.
Yeah.
And we have a very botanical show on my end of things. Things have gone very, very plant-based in my sort of research. But, you know, all the big plants associated with Christmas, with oak being really the one unexpected entry into that, I would say.
Yeah, the oak tends to make its way in there, no matter what it seems.
I mean, it's a very important tree. It definitely is. We shall discuss that, and in relation to the solstice in particular. Corona Chan's getting coal in its stocking for Christmas, and it's going to spurg out. Because OMG, it's dirty, dirty cold.
Well said, and I will raise it to some swifts as well in that stocking, and get a thorough. Oh, I can't probably say that on air. That would be rude.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yes, switches for COVID in the stocking.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know how you get something microscopic good thrashing, but...
Oh, I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure it's possible somehow. We'll make it possible. So, yeah.
Where there is a will, there is a way.
Definitely. You know, I've actually been quite sentimental today. On one hand, I have really been looking forward to having, you know, Christmas leave. But when I was working on a small project with Father Christmas today, he rudely interrupted me in my work. So, you know, it's Father Christmas, so I didn't have any choice.
Yeah, you gotta. He's the big boss when it comes to Christmas activities.
Yeah, and everyone wait until the end because I do think it's worth it. But anyway, I really got quite teary-eyed actually. That is the season finale today because I've really enjoyed making these shows, and it's been hard labor, but definitely a labor of love. So I was actually wiping a few tears on everything. So yeah.
Oh, goodness. It is absolutely wonderful, this show. It's just, I hope it improves you lot's lives, because it improves both of ours. Like, we learn so flipping much doing this show. And it's really, really, really great to be able to share all of these folk stories and all of these things that we find out that you don't really get to talk about with people too often on this platform.
Definitely, and as I agree said in one of the comments on our videos, the stories are way deeper than I initially thought. Because it's easy to see them as just a story, and then you start to look into them and think about it, and it's really a lot of wisdom and many layered of you know, lessons and everything to learn from them. So it's not just entertainment.
Symbolisms and everything, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You do find a richness in our folk tradition, which is, you know, the richest in the world. The European folk tradition.
Definitely.
Like, certainly the Indo-European folk tales are just the most packed with symbolism and meaning.
Yeah. And welcome, Rowdy Dude. It's good to see you. And I'm not going to comment on
fossil fuels.
on any coal burning.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know too much about that.
No. Okay, should we jump into our first story for tonight?
Yes. Yes, we should. This one is an Arthurian legend. We are beginning the evening with Gawain. His name is pronounced properly in the Welsh, or Gawain. And the Green Knight. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Long ago, in a place called Camelot, the great King Arthur was celebrating Christmastide, a 12-day period of feasting and jubilation. Christmas Day had passed, but there was still much more feasting to come. Sharing the king's celebrations were the knights of the Round Table, the the most honourable men in all the lands. They were renowned far and wide for their bravery and gallantry. The youngest of these knights was Arthur's own nephew, Sir Gawain. All were in good spirits and looking forward to a mighty feast. The king raised his cup and, thinking of the entertainment to come, wished aloud that they might have some wonderful mystery or adventure to spice up the feast. Before he had time to put his cup back on the table, the knights all gasped in astonishment, as there rode into the hall the strangest man they had ever seen. The visitor was extremely tall, and his face was as fierce as his arms were strong. His red eyes glowered from beneath great bristly eyebrows, and over his broad chest hung a green beard, as big as a bush. His coat, hood, and hose were green, as was his horse. The horse's mane and tail were knotted with golden threads and bells. In one hand he held a green holly bough, in the other a huge, razor-sharp axe. The axe handle was richly decorated in gold and green. The knights were dumbfounded. The king invited the stranger to join them at the table, but he replied that he had not come to feast, but to prove, once and for all, the courage of the famous fellowship before him. "If it is battle you seek," replied the king, "I will gladly accept your invitation." "No, sire," said the Green Knight, "I come not to fight, but to challenge. I want to know if any man here is bold enough to fetch one blow at me with this axe, on the condition that in a year and a day he shall stand a blow from my hand." With that he raised the giant axe above his head. All the knights were silent. No one cared to offer him such an exchange of blows. The Green Knight looked scornfully around those assembled. "Is this," he sneered, "the court at which such mighty boasts are made?" Stung by shame, the king cried out that he would take up the challenge. "You will see," said the king, "that we fear not your big words or the sharp steel of your axe." The Green Knight sprang from his horse and put the axe in Arthur's hand. But the knights pulled him away, saying it was no adventure for a king. "Grant me the chance," begged Sir Gawain. The rash young man was keen to help his king. "This is a game for a young man to play." The others backed him, and reluctantly Arthur withdrew his challenge. "Nephew," said the king, "take care that you put all your heart and strength in the stroke, so he can never repay you." The Green Knight smiled grimly. "It suits me well," he said, "to take a blow from thee, but first you must swear that you will seek me out in 12 months and a day, so I can give back what I received from you." Sir Gawain gave his word, and the giant loosed his hood and pushed aside his hair to expose his neck. Stroking his great beard, he awaited, unconcerned, what was to come. The young man grasped the heavy axe, heaved it high, and delivered it with all the strength of his arm. Down came the razor-sharp axe on the brawny neck, shearing through skin and bone, so the heavy head fell to the floor. But the giant stood firm, and, without flinching, picked up his head and sprang on his horse. The kings gasped in amazement, the queen screamed, and the knights fell into a stunned silence. As he rode from the hall, head in his hands, his eyes fixed themselves on Sir Gawain. "I have thy word," he said. "Do not fail to seek me out. You will find me at the Green Chapel." The challenge became the talk of Camelot, but as the weeks went on, other concerns crowded in, and the incident was put from most people's minds. Sir Gawain, however, did not forget. For him the months brushed past. Soon it was Lent, with its showers and buds. Then the warm sun brought forth the flowers. Next came the golden harvest, and all too soon the grass died back, the mists returned, and it was winter again. The king knew his nephew must keep his promise, and, on All Hallows, he prepared a great feast in his honour. The following day, as Sir Gawain rode from Camelot on his horse, Gringolet, many of the women could not hold back their tears. No one expected to see the brave knight again. In his search for the Green Chapel, Sir Gawain clambered many a hill and crossed many a marsh and river. He battled bears and wolves and serpents, but kept travelling. It was a harsh winter, and the brave knight often had to sleep in the open, pelted by sleet and rain. He stopped regularly to ask after the Green Knight, but no one had heard of such a man. Finally, on Christmas Eve, he found himself lost in a great mossy forest. He prayed that he may be guided to a place to rest. As he opened his eyes, he saw, in the glow of the setting sun, a noble castle on a distant hill. Spurring on his weary horse, he galloped towards the fortress. The lord of the castle met Sir Gawain with a hearty welcome. He was a very tall and sturdy knight. Sir Gawain was shown to a beautiful chamber full of rich tapestries. After he had dressed in his best attire, he joined the Christmas gathering. At the table was the lord, his beautiful lady, many knights and dames, and at the far end of the table sat a wrinkled old crone. For 3 days he enjoyed the festivities. Then he went to his host to say his farewells. He explained that he must be on his way, for he needed to find a place known as the Green Chapel. His host, however, assured him it was near at hand. Gawain was pleased to hear that his journey was nearly at an end, and readily agreed to stay for a further 3 days. His host then offered to enliven proceedings with a pledge. He planned to go hunting the next day, and offered to exchange whatever he got in the woods for whatever Sir Gawain received in the castle. A puzzled Gawain said he expected to receive nothing, but the pledge was sealed with a friendly toast. The next day the lord went out early. Some time later, whilst he was resting in his chamber, Sir Gawain received a visit from the lady of the castle. She did not hide her attraction to the young knight, but he refused her advances. She would not go, however, without giving him a kiss. When the lord of the castle returned with a venison, he gave it to Gawain, according to their agreement. In return, a very embarrassed Gawain embraced his host and gave him a kiss, the only thing he had got that day. "Ha! Who gave you that?" said his host, but Gawain laughed off the question, and they sat down to supper. The next day, at cock-crow, his host again went hunting in the woods, and once more his wife visited Sir Gawain in his chambers. Again he refused her advances, but before she left she gave him 2 kisses. This time the lord of the castle brought home a bear and a goose. An extremely embarrassed Gawain kissed his host again, and this time gave him 2 kisses. The next day dawned cold and clear. Off went the lord on his hunt, and once more the wife came, wooing her guest. This time she insisted on giving him 3 kisses, and offered him her green silk girdle. When he refused, she said, "My knight, you must face many foes. This is a magic girdle. It has the power to protect whoever wears it against any weapon." Gawain's love of life saw his resolve weaken. He knew that he couldn't live without his head, so he accepted the gift. He spent the rest of the day in the company of the old crone, but he felt uneasy. It was as if her eyes could see right through him. That evening the lord brought home only a foul fox skin, which he laughingly said was a poor reward for the 3 kisses that Gawain gave him. Gawain's heart was heavy, for the time was drawing near when he must leave the castle. He slept ill that night, as the cock's crow heralded the new day, he dressed carefully, taking care to wrap around him the green girdle. He bade good-bye to his host and set out into the dark and stormy morning. A bitter wind took his breath away. A servant had been provided to guide his way. Together they went by rugged cliffs and dark moor. As the sun rose, the guide stopped short of a dale, winding between two snow-covered hills. The guide pointed to a road. "My lord," he said, "that is the road you seek. But the one who dwells there lets no one pass alive. I beg you, go another way round. I will tell no one, I promise. For all the gold in the world I would not venture that way." With a heavy heart, Sir Gawain refused the offer, and set out down the road, which soon became bordered with many sharp banks. Eventually he came to a crag, and saw in front of him the mouth of a dark cave. He tethered his horse to a tree, and went inside. Immediately there was a fearful clattering of rock, and standing in front of the young man was the huge figure of the Green Knight, bearing an axe, his hairy head firmly back on his shoulders. "Welcome to my abode. You have timed your travels well," said the Green Knight. "Now prepare to make good on our bargain." Sir Gawain bravely removed his helmet and bent forward, but as the axe was raised, he could not help but flinch. "Ha!" said the Green Knight. "He flinches before he is hurt. When my head comes off, I cannot put it back," said Gawain, "but I gave my word, and will not flinch again." Once more the giant brandished the axe. "Strike and be done," said Gawain. "Have patience," jeered the giant, and for a third time heaved the heavy axe up into the air. This time the knight did not flinch or cry out, as the sharp axe whistled through the air and onto his neck, splitting the skin. It was a few moments before a stunned Gawain realized that, apart from a few drops of blood, he was unharmed. He turned to see, leaning on his axe, not the Green Knight, but the lord of the castle. "My brave knight," said the lord, "I raised the axe 3 times for my wife's 3 kisses. At my request, she came to see if you were a true man of honour. The cut on your neck is for the girdle that you took, but did not exchange, as was our bargain. For that, I let you feel how much sorer I could have struck." Sir Gawain stood, confounded by his own weakness and the generosity of his host. Unfastening the girdle, he offered it to his host. "Keep the girdle," said the knight, "as a token of this adventure. The debt is cleared." The knight introduced himself as Sir Birblake. "Morgan le Fay, your own aunt, endowed me with the magic charms to challenge Arthur's court. She was disguised as the old crone you saw." He bid Gawain return to the castle to get better acquainted with his new aunt, but Gawain politely refused. He had experienced enough magic for the moment. He made his way home and was greeted with great joy. The scar on his neck remained as the only evidence of his adventure. As for the lady's green girdle, he wore it as a reminder, should he ever get too proud, of his faint-heartedness. And all the knights agreed, for Gawain's sake, to wear also a green belt, as even the bravest man alive, they felt, would have shrunk from such a fate.
Okay, so that was our first story for tonight. So, it's quite an interesting one, I think.
I certainly thought so too, and I think it relates really to traditions a little bit older than Christmas. What I was very interested in about this tale is its relation really to the solstice. And to me, it seems to echo an older battle between the Oak King and the Holly King. Now, I don't know if everybody's heard of this, but every summer's end, the Holly King fights and wins a battle with the Oak King, so they say, for rulership of the year, and reigns supreme over the dark seasons of the year. And then at the end of winter, another battle is fought, this time won by the Oak King, who's triumphant over the summer months. And this is what they believed would happen to determine the sort of seasons of the year in the Celtic belief system. Or so it is. So it is believed. And I think the timings might be a bit off for this then. But we can see here that Gawain has won an initial battle and then been free to do what he wants during the summer months. But the next time he has faced this Green Knight has had the upper hand on him, and he has to go back at winter to face the reckoning and fight and basically be beaten this time. I don't know, it certainly seemed like a parallel to me there. I don't know what you think about that, maybe Lynx.
Yeah, you make good points. For me, it's more a story of morals.
Yeah.
I looked into this story about a year ago, maybe a bit more. And that was when I was picking apart A Song of Ice and Fire, the books that Game of Thrones are based upon. And I came across that. So my view is a bit colored by that. But I would say that the seasons are sort of mirrored in it.
Yeah, I do think also, it does have that moral dimension to it as well. I mean, certainly to be honest about, what you have, what you're receiving, like if you make a deal to uphold it fully. Because he mostly does. He doesn't quite, though.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have gotten any angry at all if he had upheld his deal.
Yeah, but, that's a good picture of what it is for most people. Even those who are very brave will have an inner sense of doubt and fear, in particular when it comes to death. So I think that was good to be shown in the story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that even the best man can fall to that. But in this story, of course, it includes that, okay, he got wounded because of it, but it wasn't as serious as it could have been.
Yeah, it's true.
I just have to let my cat in before she scratches apart the door. I'll be right back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, but it is interesting, this whole solstice battle. I do think it is something that relates to the theme of this story. And I also have a bit of information on, what is the significance of the oak and the holly, and why would it be these two trees, the oak king and the holly king, versus each other? Well, I suppose the oak, for a start, is really considered the king of trees among the Celts, from the research that I've done. And it's very often representative of tree of life for Celts, and in the classical world, the oak is representative of the tree of life. I think more in the Scandinavian tradition it seems to be the ash. Yggdrasil is ash, but for a lot of other cultures it is the oak. And it seems to have some significance to the Scandinavians as well, because they did dedicate an oak, Donner's oak, to Thor, which was later cut down by a missionary of the church, Saint Boniface. Well, some say it was Saint Boniface and some say it was Saint Winfrid. They're not quite in agreement on that. But yes, it was held as sacred to Zeus and Jupiter the oak as well. And some consider the Anglo-Saxon word, the Anglo-Saxon word for oak is ac, but the Irish word is dour. But yeah, it's probably cognate with the Greek drus, and some consider the old names for oak the sort of origin of the term druid. So yeah, that is sort of the significance of oak, and also mistletoe tends to grow on oak. And, you know, it's, if you have mistletoe, and we'll come back to that later as a sacred plant, if you have mistletoe growing on oak, it's considered very sacred, as is mistletoe growing on apple trees, actually. But yeah, you also have oak branches turning up. Like, there's a giant of Irish mythology called Trefun, whose name is Trefunig Treorchia. That's not how you pronounce it. Absolutely not.
I didn't envy you that.
From Irish. I should get advice from Irish Gaelic speakers. Because
Yeah.
I know Scottish Gaelic speakers, but I don't know Irish Gaelic speakers. And it's a little bit different. But yeah, there's this giant that's turned up at the hill of Tara, supposedly on the day that Christ was crucified. That's how it was written down in the versions of the tales we've got. He turns up with this branch of oak. There are acorns, apples, nuts, berries on it. So acorns, which do indicate that it's an oak, but it's a weird oak. So it has apples and berries too. But yeah, where I do sort of link this tale to the whole Oak King versus Holly King, that maybe is some clarification as to why oak is the symbol of life here. And then the holly, of course, it survives over winter. It's actually a representative of sort of fertility for a lot of people. Because of the red berries, that's, you know, considered like blood and life force. And you have some significance of holly as well. It generally represents survival over the winter and stuff like that. But I think this tale relates to that, and a few other tales do. It seems to fit into an archetype. It seems to fit into an archetype of which the tale of Cuchulainn is also part of that archetype. Because again, there's another battle between Cuchulainn, the Irish hero, son of Lugh, has a tremendous battle with this guy called MacDair, who's like, name translates as son of oak tree. And in that story, he challenges Cuchulainn to behead him and to be beheaded himself in return. So that's very obviously a forerunner of Gawain and the Green Knight. So it seems to be a bit of a... I don't know if it's got its own, like, archetype classification, but there are certainly several tales of the type. You know? I don't know,
Yeah.
you'd ever heard of Cuchulainn? Thinks he's quite well known as out of the Irish heroes. I think he's
No.
probably... Yeah, we should really cover him sometime.
Yeah.
Because he gets up to a lot. He goes on a lot of exploits. He has adventures. He does shenanigans. Definitely.
Yeah.
Notable Irish demigod.
Yeah. It sounds like one of those who either keep getting into trouble or continue to seek out trouble in many ways. But
Yeah. His origin story is that when he's 7, he gets, I think, cursed to be like a really good warrior but die young.
ah,
But he doesn't really seem to marry. He doesn't really seem to mind that though
no.
too much.
I would think that gifts like that are bestowed on those who are worthy of it. So he would have the warrior spirit.
Yes.
That is fitting
Absolutely.
to that. Yeah, it's one of those things. In at least for me, I actually haven't heard that many of the folk stories from the British Isles. Of course, I've heard about King Arthur and everything, but most of what I know comes from mainstream media, movies and stuff like that. So
Yes.
it's not anything I know that much about, which was one of the reasons why I got excited about the show, because I would learn more about tales I didn't know much about before.
Yes. It certainly has been enlightening for me to hear a lot of these Norwegian tales as well. It's very much... It's enlightening to see how some of them are similar, and also like how there's ideas that the British and Irish culture would never have produced in them as well sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stories change a bit according to the people, and they are, of course, changed by their environment. So it's, a natural progression.
Yes.
And speaking
Indeed.
of that, when I looked into the Green Knight earlier, I learned that the story also made its way into France and Germany. And in particular in Germany, it took on a quite peculiar form, because in several of those stories with the Green Knight, his ability to come back to life is tied to his cloak. So in one story he was beheaded without his cloak, and he couldn't get back up.
Oh, that's interesting.
Very interesting.
That action has sort of come along.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what the cloak then would symbolize in that. That is intriguing. That's a sort of variant.
Yeah, well, there are several stories with magical cloaks that will make you invisible. So it sort of married those, I would think. But also that his power comes from an outside source. I couldn't see who, if any, gave him the cloak, but yeah, that was definitely an interesting take on it.
It is indeed. For me, in general, with this version of the story, though, it's reminding me very much of other similar rivalries, sort of seen, like we mentioned in the sea episode, Mither of the Sea versus Turan from Orkney. That they don't really have much trees on Orkney, so they definitely wouldn't really represent the changing of the seasons by trees. Bit exposed.
Not. Yeah.
Exposed for those. Yeah. And we've sort of got Lu as well, and Odin who sacrificed themselves on an oak tree.
Yeah.
And that's sort of imagery that's kind of relevant there.
Mm-hmm.
I was interested also in that crone, because another person who does crop up in Celtic winter, who I think is present in Ireland and Scotland and to some extent Wales, I think, is the Cailleach. And she's a winter spirit. And I find it, again, quite symbolic that there's involvement of a crone in this story, who is helping or keeping watch on behalf of the Holly King. I don't quite know who the wife would represent in my sort of story. I mean, in some versions of mythology, Breed, the goddess of spring, is forced to serve the Cailleach all winter. So his wife could actually be Breed, but that then she escapes with the god of love in the summer. But it seems to fit a general archetype. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
And I know that Holly was significant. I don't know exactly what for, but I know that it carried on being used in all sorts of strange ways, like holly bushes in Yorkshire decorated with, like, sort of. Well, first they had sort of a great ball of evergreens instead of a Christmas tree back in the day. Like, you had holly and mistletoe and all that wound into a big ball, and Christian figures and apples and stuff woven into it. And in Yorkshire, you had a holly bush decorated sort of like that they would carry around them when they were doing wassailing the trees. So you would use holly to wassail your trees, which basically means sing at them, pour beer on them, and that is said to make them grow nice and fertile the next year, so especially your fruit trees. And holly was thought to be really symbolic about fertility as well. In fact, if you brought holly with no berries into the house, that was bad luck, and you had to have ivy or box in with it, because otherwise it was actually thought to symbolize infertility, apparently. So that is kind of a weird thing. You have holly being the representative of winter, but also being fertile. But maybe, I guess, winter is needed for the spring blooming. I don't know. Oh, in Scotland, the boys hit each other with holly for good luck on Hogmanay. Each drop of blood drawn from that meant a year of good health and prosperity. As far as I know, Scotland doesn't do that still currently. I haven't seen any Scottish men chasing each other around with holly on Hogmanay. If you actually suggested it to them, though, would they take you up on the offer, being drunk enough? Maybe. Maybe they would. Who knows?
You never know with them Scots, you know?
You never do know. You never do know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of everything that I've sort of found out about the holly. There's also like particular ways of disposing of it, and you're supposed to burn it after Candlemas Eve, and replace it with different greenery. And it's very, very important to get rid of your holly properly. Apparently, at springtime in Scotland, the Cailleach, through her magic rod or hammer, she has a magic hammer, Cailleach, and she throws it under the holly, admitting defeat in the race of the growing light. And that's why no grass grows on the holly trees, apparently.
Ah, I see.
I got a bit like obsessed with botanical plant research.
So I
was
hear.
just like, ooh, plant lore.
Yeah, well,
I love it.
Those rabbit holes can be very interesting.
Indeed.
I try to remember what plant I was talking about on our guest appearance on White Art Collective. That was
Now I'm
used
trying to remember too.
Yeah. It was used to clean the homes, in particular to May Day. And it was also burned to make people who were sick better again, but I can't remember what plant that was.
It wasn't mistletoe, was it?
It might have been mistletoe, actually.
I think it might have been mistletoe, because I remember saying something about mistletoe on that stream too.
Yeah, and
I think it was a response to you.
Yeah, it is connected to Christmas. I wouldn't fall into a random rabbit hole of plants, so I do think it was mistletoe. So, and as
Yes.
AlphaGo is saying, he commented that we need this. We are being attacked by anti-censored botanists and archaeologists, and apparently on Twitter it emerged that botany in England was racist.
Goodness.
It wasn't inclusive enough. So, too
Yeah,
many native
it's
species.
Too many native species.
You could
Oh
make these things up,
Oh my goodness. The plants are racist now.
Yeah.
Next, will they be talking about how red squirrels should actually just accept the grey squirrels, and there is no evidence that they carry smallpox, carry squirrelpox virus?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear. That's depressing.
Yeah.
Even into plant science, gardenings.
Yeah. I was actually going to have a story for night that I couldn't find, so I will have to get back to that story a bit later. Make it up to you guys.
Yeah, it would be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of these old stories are very hard to track down on the internets.
Yeah, but with this one I actually start to wonder if it's a recent story. I was sure that I had it in my book, but it wasn't. So it might actually be one of the more recent stories, like Carpenter Andersen. A story that has just become, an instant classic.
Yes.
But I will, unless I will have to do it by memory, I will have to make it up to you guys. I will give it to you. But you had an interesting connection to the story, Katrina, because the story is about a mitten that is lost in the woods and what's happening to that mitten until it is recovered, and that is quite interesting.
And if it is a recent story, I certainly think the author has taken inspiration from some older sources, because it is remarkably similar to the exploits of a couple of Norse gods.
Yeah.
Remarkably similar.
Yeah, I hadn't made that connection before. So when you mentioned it, I looked it up, and indeed it was very interesting. So I was initially thinking of just reading a very short excerpt of that, but I will read it from the beginning until the mystery of the mitten is cleared up. And this is a live reading, so as I said, Father Christmas had me very busy today, so I couldn't finish my editing. So yeah, I will do it live. Thor and Loki in the giant city. All but a few of the dwellers of Asgard had come to the feast offered by the Aegir the Old, the giant king of the sea. Frigga, the queenly wife of Odin, was there, and Frey and Freya, Iduna, who guarded the apples of youth, and Bragi, her husband, Tyr, the great swordsman, and Njord, the god of the sea, Skadi, who wedded Njord and whose hatred for Loki was fierce, and Sif, whose golden hair was one shorn off by Loki the mischievous. Thor and Loki was there. The dwellers of Asgard gathered together in the hall of Aegir, waiting for Odin. Before Odin came, Loki made the company merry by the tales that he told in the mockery of Thor. Loki had long since had his lips unloosed from the thong that the dwarf Brock had sewn them with, and Thor had forgotten the wrong. That he had done to Sif. Loki had been with Thor in his wanderings through Jotunheim, and about these wanderings he now told mocking tales. He told how he had seen Thor in his chariot of brass drawn by 2 goats go across Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. None of the Aesir or the Vanir knew on what adventure Thor was bent. But Loki followed him, and Thor kept him in his company. As they travelled on in the brass chariot drawn by the 2 goats, Thor told Loki of the adventure on which he was bent. He would go into Jotunheim, even into Utgard, the giant city, and he would try strength against the giants. He was not afraid of aught that might happen, for he carried Mjolnir, his hammer, with him. Their way was through Midgard, the world of men. Once, as they were travelling on, night came upon them as they were hungry and in need of shelter. They saw a peasant's hut, and they drove the chariot towards it, unyoking the goats and leaving them standing in a hollow beside the chariot, the 2 looking not like dwellers in Asgard, but like men travelling through the country, knocked at the door of the hut and asked for food and shelter. They could have shelter, the peasant and his wife told them, but they could not have food. There was little in that place, and what little there had been, they had eaten for supper. The peasant showed them inside of the hut. It was poor and bare, and there was nothing there to give anyone. In the morning, the peasant said, he would go down to the river and catch some fish for a meal. "We can't wait until morning, we must eat now," said Thor, "and I think I can provide a good meal for all of us." He went over to where his goat stood in the hollow beside the chariot of brass, and striking them with his hammer, he left them lifeless on the ground. He skinned the goats then, and taking up the bones very carefully, he left them down on the skins. The skins and bones he lifted up, and bringing them into the house, he left them in a hole above the peasant's fireplace. "No one," he said in a commanding voice, must touch the bones that I leave here." Then he brought the meat into the house. Soon it was cooked and laid smoking on the table. The peasant and his wife and his son sat around the table, with Thor and Loki. They had not eaten plentiful for many days, and now the man and the woman fed themselves well. Thialfi was the name of the peasant's son. He was a growing lad and had an appetite that had not been satisfied for long. While the meat was on the table, his father and mother kept on going here and there, carrying water, putting faggots on the fire, and holding a blazing stick so those at the table might see to eat. There was not much left for him when he was able to sit down, for Thor and Loki had great appetites, and the lad's father and mother had eaten to make up for days of want. So Thialfi got little out of that plentiful feast. When the meal was finished, they lay down on the benches. Thor, because he had made a long journey that day, slept very soundly. Thialfi lay down on the bench too, but his thoughts was still upon the food. When all were asleep, he thought, he would take one of the bones that were in the skins above him, and break and gnaw it. So in the dead of night, the lad stood up on the bench and took down the goat skin that Thor had left so carefully there. He took out a bone, broke it, and gnawed it for the marrow. Loki was awake and saw him do this, but he, relishing mischief as much as ever, did not stay the lad. He put the bone he had broken back in the skins and left the skins back in the hole above the fireplace. Then he went to sleep on the bench. In the morning, as soon as they were up, the first thing Thor did was to take the skins out of the hole. He carried them carefully out to the hollow where he had left the goats standing. He put each goat skin down with the bones in it. He struck each with his hammer, and the gold sprang up alive, horns and hoofs and all. But one was not as he had been before. He limped badly. Thor examined the leg and found out that one bone was broken. In terrible anger he turned on the peasant, his wife and his son. "A bone of this goat has been broken under your roof," he shouted. "For that I shall destroy your house and leave you all dead under it." Thialfi wept. Then he came forward and touched the knee of Thor. "I did not know what harm I did," he said. "I broke the bone." Thor had his hammer lifted up to crush him into the earth, but he could not bring it down on the weeping boy. He let his hammer rest on the ground again. "You will have to do much service for me for having lamed my goat," he said. "Come with me." And so the lad Thialfi went off with Thor and Loki. Thor took in his powerful hands the shaft of the chariot of brass, and he dragged it into a lonely mountain hollow where neither men nor giants came. And they left the goats in a great empty forest to stay resting in there until Thor called to them again. Thor and Loki and the lad Thialfi went across from Midgard into Jotunheim. Because of Mjolnir, the great hammer that he carried, Thor felt safe in the realm of the giants, and Loki, who trusted in his own cunning, felt safe too. The lad Thialfi trusted in Thor so much that he had no fear. They were long in making the journey, and while they were traveling, Thor and Loki trained Thialfi to be quick and a strong lad. One day they came out on a moor. All day they crossed it, and at night it still stretched far before them. A great wind was blowing, night was falling, and they saw no shelter near. In the dusk they saw a shape that looked to be a mountain, and they went towards it, hoping to find some shelter in a cave. Then Loki saw a lower shape that looked as if it might be a shelter. They walked around it, Loki and Thor and the lad Thialfi. It was a house, but a house most oddly shaped. The entrance was a long wide hall that had no doorway. When they entered this hall, they found 5 long and narrow chambers running off it. It is an odd place, but it is the best shelter we can get, said Loki. You and I, Thor, will take the 2 longest rooms, and the lad Thialfi can take one of the little rooms. They entered the chambers and they lay down to sleep. But from the mountain outside there came a noise that was like moaning forest and falling cataracts. The chamber where each one slept was shaken by the noise, and neither Thor nor Loki nor the lad Thialfi slept that night. In the morning they left the five-chambered house and turned their faces towards the mountain. It was not a mountain at all, but a giant. He was lying on the ground when they saw him, but just then he rolled over and sat up. Little men, he shouted to them. Have you passed by a glove of mine on your way? He stood up and looked all around him. Oh, I see my glove now, he said. Thor and Loki and the lad Thialfi stood still as the giant came towards them. He leaned over and picked up the 5-room shelter they had slept in. He put it in his hand. It was really his glove.
Sir Gawain
So,
and the
yeah.
Green Knight. Long ago, in a place called Camelot, the great King Arthur.
Sorry about that. I came to the to the wrong scene. But yeah, now you know the story of the odd-shaped house found in Jotunheim.
It was a glove. A really, really big one.
A very, very big glove.
Interestingly, I think when I first heard these stories, it wasn't directly from the Prose Edda. And in a version I heard, Loki tricks Thialfi into eating the bone marrow, as opposed to just ignoring the fact that he's done it.
Yeah.
Which seemed quite like Loki to me. And so I'll have to look into which one of those versions was more likely to have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have to say that I'm a bit upset with the parents. They have a growing child and they think more of themselves than feeding the child. Shame on you.
That's true.
Shame.
That is. Shame indeed. Yeah, and I think the story seems to definitely condemn that. I think.
Yeah.
Raising one's children properly, what they did would have been considered quite selfish. Parents like that, he was probably quite lucky to be taken as the servant of 4 anyway.
Yeah, it's not everyone. It's not everyone who has the honor of being trained by Thor and Loki themselves. For all his faults, Loki is a power to contend with. So yeah.
Indeed, yes. He's an interesting one. You can argue about the extent to which he was a villain or someone who was trying to impress or something like that. I mean, Odinists certainly don't worship him just because of the extent of what he's done. He's a very interesting character, Loki, indeed. Yes.
Yeah, you could say that he sort of is the archetype of letting temptation take the better of him, with a bit of a whimsical mind. Oh, this would be fun. Oh, this would, stir things up a bit. Let's do that. So, it's easy to see him in many different ways. But I do think that both Loki and Thor recognize that that the boy had been hungry, and as such he didn't do it by malice. Maybe they too thought back to the meal, and he did do a lot of chores and everything, and he didn't get that much out of the meal, so we can't not punish him, but
he's got a limp now.
Goat. Yeah. I wonder if the goat was healed by the time in the forest when they come back. I haven't read that far.
I think it does come into play later. We shall post. I shall find a version of that story in the Edda. Because it goes on and it's quite interesting what happens with the giants. Thor and Loki are set some very particular challenges.
Yeah, they are.
So see, we can post that one. Because we haven't actually read anything from the Edda, either of the Eddas on this show.
No, just some excerpts.
That was the first time.
I did some stanzas about Nidhögg, but that was it. I might actually, if there's interest, I can do the reading of the whole thing. So,
It'd be quite an undertaking, but certainly there was interest, and we can certainly include a little bit more of it.
Yeah.
Some very good stories. Very good stories indeed.
Yeah, at the very least I might do the whole chapter that I was doing right now. So you can have all of the tales from Jotunheimer.
Yeah. Be good.
It would.
So, we have a couple more stories tonight. We have one about mistletoe. Very short. More of a poem, actually. And to finish off, we have one about Father Christmas.
Yeah.
Who is it? So, yeah.
Okay.
Have one about mistletoe. It's a poem from the Druids Society, so the order of Druids in the UK, OBOD. I can't remember what that stands for off the top of my head. And this is a poem that they have about mistletoe.
Okay, let's get to it.
Gathering the mistletoe. On the 6th day after the new moon, a procession of village folk gathered to seek a special boon underneath the ancient oak. They spied a clump of mistletoe, high in the oaken canopy. The berries gave a milky glow against bare limbs of the winter tree. A white-robed druid climbed through the boughs with his golden sickle blade. A green circlet of ivy round his brow, his long dark hair caught up in a braid. Extending his body along a stout limb, he could just reach the holy plant. Anxiously below they waited for him, and began their sacred chant. Stretched beneath the gnarled wood, a sheet of white linen was spread. For the herb to touch the ground would be an ominous omen of dread. Deftly the druid cut the stem, and the herb fell upon the sheet. A cheer rose from within the glen, and the deed was declared complete. A white bull was sacrificed that night, and a midwinter feast was held for all. The herb was preserved for a holy rite, a gift from the venerable druids of Gaul.
Short and sweet, I would say.
Yes, indeed. They did actually, just as a note, in the poem they put the holy chant bit in there in Gaelic, but I couldn't pronounce it, so I asked for some help, and apparently that is pronounced Ul Iok Su. Let me just listen to the flipping voice recording I got sent of it. Yeah, so it's Ul Iok Druklus Su Indaroch. The chant that they would have said in the middle of that poem. And when they refer to mistletoe as Ul Iok, that means all heal.
Yeah,
and they are also referring to the juice of the oak.
Yeah, that was interesting.
In that chant. And the reason, it seems, why mistletoe is so sacred. Yeah, it is a mouthful, I agree.
I don't envy you those words.
Yeah. I probably still murdered the pronunciation of that, but it was probably at least recognizable. Yeah, but herbalists have used the plant to treat epilepsy, sores, ulcers, poisoning. I had to adjust my mic there, sorry. In folklore, it's also said to protect against lightning, fires, disease, and misfortune, but I still wouldn't recommend standing on top of a hill in a thunderstorm wearing copper armor to test that hypothesis.
That
Probably
might not be the best idea. Just in case.
Definitely don't remain in a burning house with a branch of mistletoe.
No. Hold on to the mistletoe, but please go outside.
Please do go outside, yes. And also don't place it in the crib with your baby to guard it from being stolen by fairies and replaced with a changeling. That's probably bad. The berries are poisonous. You should maybe hang it above the crib if you are very concerned about changeling replacement.
Yeah.
It is a problem.
Hang it out of reach from the child, please. Safety first.
It's actually spelled offensive username a bit more like it's spelled UILI-IOC. So yeah, it's Ul-Ioch. But yeah. Kiss under the mistletoe, which refers to its ancient status as a fertility charm, apparently. And they removed a berry for each kiss, originally.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah.
And thank you for the ice cream, Hess. That is very generous of you.
There's actually, yes, thank you indeed, Hess. There's actually quite wide symbolism of mistletoe because it grows in a lot of places. It grows in both Europe and America. So you have like an Italian story where a beautiful fairy appears to a knight and with the image of a crescent moon and the Holy Grail at her feet, and she holds mistletoe in her hands and tells him that the plant keeps her eternally young and beautiful. And the main thing that I know about mistletoe is it is the wood that killed Baldur. the shining god, the pride of the gods. Some say a sun god.
Yeah, and
for the Norse.
And the reason why why the mistletoe wasn't considered to have to take that promise of not hurting Balder was because it was considered so small and insignificant, so it couldn't hurt him. So
yes, it was considered too young, too small.
Yeah.
But Loki was quite jealous of Balder, and he hides some mistletoe away, and he makes it into a dart and gives it to the blind god Hodur, who's Balder's brother.
Yeah.
And Hodur doesn't know what he's throwing, but heck, it's made out of a certain type of wood, and maybe a seeing person wouldn't actually know what they were throwing either. And he says, they're playing this game because everything's promised not to hurt Balder. Everything in the world. Frigga's made everything promise, so they can throw axes at Balder, and they're throwing arrows at him, and they're having a lot of fun because everything just bounces off him. And Hodur just throws this dart, which Loki says, "Oh yeah, here, yeah, you join in the game," and he guides Hodur to throw the dart, and it pierces Balder and instantly kills him. And there's actually Frigga then actually goes round, and she gets a deal from Hel, the goddess of death, the goddess of the underworld, really, that if everybody weeps for Balder, then he can come back to the world of the living. But nearly everybody does, except for one old woman, I think it was, who's suspected to be Loki in disguise. And some people are claiming the white berries of mistletoe represent Frigga's tears among the Norse.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not a good plant for the Norsemen for that reason. And I know that, for example, in the Odinist temple in Britain, you can't take that in there. You can't take that in there. You can't take in any mistletoe, because it killed Balder. But you have, again, other countries having, very protective associations with mistletoe. Eastern Europe swears on mistletoe for protection against werewolves, apparently. And Aeneas, of Greek myth, could only go down to Tartarus when he carried a sprig of mistletoe in his hand as protection. But the reason the Druids, or so say the order of Druids currently, regard this mistletoe as the most sacred is because it grows between the earth and the sky, touching neither. So its symbolism includes the unknown, the life force. They say divine semen, and associate the white berries with that. I'm like, okay, I get that.
Yeah, I don't really have any problems with that association. In the Norse, of course, it is tied together with basically all evergreens as, symbol of eternal life. Those who can live through winter. So those plants have always been held in high regards when you're so far north.
Yeah. That's an odd phrase to read, though. I never had to read that phrase before. Never heard that. Never had that crop up.
I think I come across all kinds of stuff looking into this. So
yeah, but of course, if your mistletoe is found growing on oak, then it's especially valued for healing.
yeah,
It's special plant plus special plant, double power.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and the Native Americans do have beliefs about it as well, because it is in America. Well, so they have a custom of the mountain oak and the life spirit of the mountain oak retreated into the mistletoe during harsh times. So they bring the mistletoe into the home during the harsh winter season to bring in the spirit of the oak. And they wonder if the Druids in Europe held maybe like the same belief, possibly. I mean, I could see how those two things might crop up independently. It's worth considering.
Yeah. When people observe the same thing, then there would be similarities, I would say. And that is without going into some deep rabbit holes. I will refrain from doing that tonight.
Yeah, but there's deep rabbit holes about why seemingly European customs and European-appearing things might have turned up in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very deep.
Yeah, deep and a very huge subject. It's huge.
Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I do find it a bit funny with huge. It just ends up being a meme in its own. You know?
It is. I've heard the golden one use huge.
Ah. I will...
I think he's been... Yes, watch Ashlogos for more. Absolutely.
Definitely. Always watch Ashlogos. No matter what. You know, I watch him just to relax.
It's great stuff. It's great stuff.
Definitely. Okay.
But, yeah.
Is it time for Old Father Christmas then?
It is. It is time. It's time for Father Christmas. It was on the promo. You got Father Christmas.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not actually sure how old the story is or who the author is. That didn't say on the page I found it on. So it might be some time from the late 1800s. At least the story is placed in 1830. And
yes, it sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's written as an old man recounting his childhood when he saw his first Christmas tree. And AlphaGo, yes, this is the last stream before Christmas, our season finale, and we will be back with our streams on the new year, and we'll go into that a bit more after the story. So yeah, let's listen to Old Father Christmas. Old Father Christmas. The custom of Christmas trees came from Germany. I can remember when they first were introduced into England, and what wonderful things we taught them. Now every village school has its tree, and the scholars openly discuss whether the presents have been good or mean as compared with other trees in former years. The first one that I ever saw, I believe to have come from good Father Christmas himself. but little boys have grown too wise now to be taken in for their own amusement. They are not excited by secret and mysterious preparations in the back drawing room. They hardly confess to the thrill, which I feel to this day, when the folding doors are thrown open, and amid the blaze of tapers, Mamma, like a fate, advances with her scissors to give every one what falls to his lot. Well, young people, when I was 8 years old, I had not seen a Christmas tree, and the first picture of one I ever saw was the picture of that held by old Father Christmas in my godmother's picture book. "What are those things on the tree?" I asked. "Candles," said my father. "No, father, not the candles, the other things." "Those are toys, my son." "Are they ever taken off?" "Yes, they are taken off and given to the children who stand around the tree." Patty and I grasped each other by the hand, and with one voice murmured, "How kind of old Father Christmas!" By and by I asked, "How old is Father Christmas?" My father laughed and said, 1,830 years, child, which was then the year of our Lord, and thus 1,830 years since the first great Christmas day. "He looks very old," whispered Patty, and I, who was for my age what Kitty called Bible learned, said thoughtfully, and with some puzzlement of mind, "Then he's older than Methuselah." But my father had left the room and did not hear my difficulty. November and December went by, and still the picture book kept all its charm for Patty and me, and we pondered on and loved old Father Christmas as children can love and realize a fancy friend, to those who remember the fancies of their childhood and need say no more. Christmas week came. Christmas Eve came. My father and mother were mysteriously and unaccountably busy in the parlor. We only had one parlor, and Patty and I were not allowed to go in. We went into the kitchen, but even here was no place of rest for us. Kitty was all over the place, as she phrased it, and cakes, mince pies, and puddings were with her. As she justly observed, there was no place there for children and books to sit with their toes in the fire, when a body wanted to be at the oven all along. The cat was enough for her temper, she added. As to Puss, who obstinately refused to take a hint which drove her out into the Christmas frost, she returned again and again with soft steps, and a stupidity that was, I think, affected, to the warm hearth, only to fly at intervals like a football before Kitty's hasty slipper. We had more sense, or less courage. We bowed to Kitty's behest and went to the back door. Patty and I were hardy children, and accustomed to run out in all weathers without much extra wrapping up. We put Kitty's shawl over our 2 heads and went outside. I rather hoped to see something of Dick, for it was holiday time, but no Dick passed. He was busy helping his father to bore holes in the carved seats of the church, which were to hold sprigs of holly for the morrow. That was the idea of church decoration in my young days. You have improved on your elders there, young people, and I am candid enough to allow it. Still, the sprigs of red and green were better than nothing, and like your lovely wreaths and pious devices, they made one feel as if the old black wood were bursting into life and leaf again for very Christmas joy, and if only one knelt carefully, they did not scratch his nose. Well, Dick was busy and not to be seen. We ran across the little yard and looked over the wall at the end to see if we could see anything or anybody. From this point there was a pleasant meadow field sloping prettily away to a little hill about 3/4 of a mile distant, which, catching some fine breezes of the moors beyond, was held to be a place of cure for whooping cough, or kin cough, as it was vulgarly called. Up to the top of this Kitty had dragged me and carried Patty when we were recovering from the complaint, as I well remember. It was the only change of air we could afford, and I dare say it did as well as if we had gone to a badly drained lodging at the seaside. This hill was now covered with snow and stood off against the grey sky. The white fields looked vast and dreary in the dusk. The only gay things to be seen were the berries on the holly hedge in the little lane, which, running by the end of our backyard, led up to the hall, and the fat robin that was staring at me. I was looking at the robin when Patty, who had been peering out of her corner of Kitty's shawl, gave a great jump that dragged the shawl from our heads and cried, "Look!" I looked. An old man was coming along the lane. His hair and beard were as white as cotton wool. He had a face like the sort of apple that keeps well in winter. His coat was old and brown. There was snow about him in patches, and he carried a small fir tree. The same conviction seized upon us both. With one breath we exclaimed, "It's old Father Christmas!" I know now that it was only an old man of the place with whom we did not happen to be acquainted, and that he was taking a little fir tree up to the hall to be made into a Christmas tree. He was a very good-humoured old fellow, and rather deaf, for which he made up by smiling and nodding his head a good deal and saying "Aye, aye, to be sure," at likely intervals. As he passed us and met our earnest gaze, he smiled and nodded so earnestly that I was bold enough to cry, "Good evening, Father Christmas." "Same to you," said he in a high-pitched voice. "Then you are Father Christmas," said Paddy. "And a Happy New Year," was Father Christmas's reply, which rather put me out. But he smiled in such a satisfactory manner that Paddy went on, "You're very old, aren't you?" "So I be, miss, so I be," said Father Christmas, nodding. "Father says you are 1830 years old," I muttered. "Aye, aye, to be sure," said Father Christmas. "I am a long age." "A very long age," thought I, and I added, "You're nearly twice as old as Methuselah, you know," thinking that this might have struck him. "Aye, aye," said Father Christmas, but he did not seem to think anything of it. After a pause he held up the tree and cried, "Do you know what this is, little miss?" "A Christmas tree," said Paddy. And the old man smiled and nodded. I leaned over the wall and shouted, "But there are no candles." "By and by," said Father Christmas, nodding as before. "When it's dark, they'll all be lighted up. That'll be a fine sight." "Toys too there'll be, won't there?" said Paddy. Father Christmas nodded his head, and sweeties, he added expressively. I could feel Paddy trembling, and my own heart beat fast. The thought which agitated us both was this: was Father Christmas bringing the tree to us? But the very anxiety, and some modesty also, kept us from asking outright. Only when the old man shouldered his tree and prepared to move on, I cried in despair, "Where are you going?" "I'm coming back by and by," said he. "How soon?" cried Paddy. "About 4 o'clock," said the old man. "I'm only going up yonder." Up yonder. This puzzled us. Father Christmas had pointed, but so indefinitely that he might have been pointing to the sky, or the fields, or the little wood at the end of the squire's ground. I thought the latter, and suggested to Paddy that perhaps he had some place on the ground like Aladdin's cave, where he got the candles and all the pretty things for the tree. The idea pleased us both, and we amused ourselves by wondering what old Father Christmas would choose for us from his stores in that wonderful hole where he dressed his Christmas trees. "I wonder, Paddy," said I, "why there's no picture of Father Christmas's dog in the book?" For at the old man's heel in the lane there crept a little brown and white spaniel, looking very dirty in the snow. "Perhaps it's a new dog that has got to take care of his cave," said Paddy. When we went indoors, we examined the picture afresh in the dim light from the passage window, but there was no dog there. My father passed us at this moment and patted my head. "Father," said I don't know, but I do think old Father Christmas is going to bring us a Christmas tree tonight." "Who's been telling you that?" said my father. But he passed on before I could explain that we had seen Father Christmas himself, and had had his word for it that he would return at 4 o'clock, and that the candles on his tree would be lighted as soon as it was dark. We hovered on the outskirts of the rooms till 4 o'clock came. We sat on the stairs and watched the big clock, which I was just learning to read, and Paddy made herself giddy with constantly looking up and counting the 4 strokes, toward which the hour hand slowly moved. We put our noses into the kitchen now and then to smell the cakes and get warm, and anon we hung around the parlour door, and were most unjustly accused of trying to peep. What did we care what our mother was doing in the parlour? We who had seen old Father Christmas himself, and were expecting him back again every moment. At last the church clock struck. The sound boomed heavily through the forest, and Paddy thought there were 4 of them. Then, after due choking and whirring, our own clock struck, and we counted the strokes quite clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we got Kitty's shawl once more, and stole out into the backyard. We ran to our old place and peeped, but could see nothing. "We'd better get up onto the wall," I said, and with some difficulty and distress from rubbing her bare knees against the cold stone and getting snow up her sleeves, Patty got onto the coping on the little wall. I was just struggling after her when something warm and something cold coming suddenly against the bare calves of my legs made me shriek with fright. I came down with a run and bruised my knees, my elbows and my chin, and the snow that hadn't gone up Patty's sleeves went down my neck. Then I found that the cold thing was a dog's nose, and the warm thing was his tongue, and Patty cried from her post of observation, "It's Father Christmas's dog and it's licking her legs." It really was the dirty little brown and white spaniel, and he persisted in licking me and jumping on me and making curious little noises that must have meant something if one had known his language. I was rather harassed at the moment. My legs were sore. I was a little afraid of the dog, and Paddy was very much afraid of sitting on the wall without me. "You won't fall," I said to her. "Get down, will you?" I said to the dog. "Humpty Dumpty fell off a wall," said Paddy. Said the dog. I pulled Paddy down, and the dog tried to pull me down, but when my little sister was on her feet, to my relief he transferred his attention to her. When he had jumped at her and licked at her several times, he turned around and ran away. "He's gone," I said. "I'm so glad." But even as I spoke he was back again, crouching at Patty's feet and glaring at her with eyes the colour of his ears. Now Paddy was very fond of animals, and when the dog looked at her, she looked at the dog, and then she said to me, "He wants us to go with him," on which, as if he understood our language, though we were ignorant of his, the spaniel sprang away and went off as hard as he could, and Paddy and I went after him, a dim hope crossing my mind. Perhaps Father Christmas has sent him for us. The idea was rather favoured by the fact that he led us up the lane. Only a little way, then he stopped by something lying in the ditch, and once more we cried in the same breath, "It's old Father Christmas!" Returning from the hall, the old man had slipped on a bit of ice and lay stunned in the snow. Patty began to cry. "I think he's dead," she sobbed. "He is so very old, I don't wonder," I murmured, "but perhaps he's not. I'll fetch Father." My father and Kitty was soon on the spot. Kitty was as strong as a man, and they carried old Father Christmas between them into the kitchen. There he quickly revived. I must do Kitty the justice to say that she did not utter a word of complaint at the disturbance of her labour, and that she drew the old man's chair close to the oven with her own hand. She was so much affected by the behaviour of his dog that she admitted him even to the hearth, on which Puss, being acute enough to see how matters stood, lay down with her back so close to the spaniels that Kitty could not expel the one without kicking both. For our parts, we felt sadly anxious about the tree. Otherwise we could have wished for no better treat than to sit at Kitty's round table, taking tea with Father Christmas. Our usual fare of thick bread and treacle was tonight exchanged for a delicious variety of cakes, which were none the worse to us for being tasters and wasters, that is, little bit of dough or shortbread put in to try the state of the oven, and certain cakes that had gotten broken or burnt in the baking. Well, there we sat, helping old Father Christmas to tea and cake, and wondering in our hearts what could have become of the tree. Patty and I felt a delicacy in asking Old Father Christmas about the tree. It was not until we had had tea 3 times round, with tasters and wasters to match, that Patty said very gently, "It's quite dark now." Burning anxiety overcame me. I leaned toward Father Christmas and shouted. I had found out that it was needful to shout. "I suppose the candles are on the tree now." "Just about putting them on," said Father Christmas. "And the presents too?" said Patty. "Aye, aye, to be sure," said Father Christmas, and he smiled delightfully. I was thinking what further questions I might venture upon, when he pushed his cup towards Patty, saying, "Since you are so pressing, miss, I'll take another dish." And Kitty, swooping on us from the oven, cried, "Make yourself at home, sir. There's more where these came from. Make a long arm, Miss Patty, and hand them the cakes." And so we had to devote ourselves to the duties of the table, and Patty, holding the lid in one hand and pouring with the other, supplied Father Christmas's wants with a heavy heart. At last he was satisfied. I said grace, during which he stood, and indeed he stood for some time afterwards with his eyes shut, I fancy under the impression that I was still speaking. He had just said a fervent amen and reseated himself, when my father put his head into the kitchen and made this remarkable statement. "Old Father Christmas has sent a tree to the young people." Patty and I uttered a cry of delight, and we forthwith danced around the old man, saying, "How nice! Oh, how kind of you!" which I think must have bewildered him, but he only smiled and nodded. "Come, children, come, Reuben, come, Kitty." And he went into the parlor, and we all followed him. My godmother's picture of a Christmas tree was very pretty. The flames of the candles were so naturally done in red and yellow that I always wondered that they did not shine at night. But the picture was nothing to the reality. We had been sitting almost in the dark, for as Kitty said, firelight was quite enough to burn at mealtimes, and when the parlour door was thrown open, and the tree, with lighted tapers on all the branches, burst upon our view, the blaze was dazzling, and threw such a glory around the little gifts, and the bags of coloured muslin, with acid drops and pink rose drops and comfits inside, as I shall never forget. We all got something, and Paddy and I, at any rate, believed that the things came from the stores of Old Father Christmas. We were not undeceived even by his gratefully accepting a bundle of old clothes, which had been hastily put together to form his present. We were all very happy, even Kitty, I think, though she kept her sleeves rolled up, and seemed rather to grudge enjoying herself, a weak point in some energetic characters. She went back to her oven before the lights were out and the angel on the top of the tree taken down. She looked up her present, a little workbox, at once. She often showed it off afterwards, but it was kept in the same bit of tissue paper till she died. Our presents certainly did not last so long. The old man died about a week afterward, so we never made his acquaintance as a common personage. When he was buried, his little dog came to us. I suppose he remembered the hospitality he had received. Paddy adopted him, and he was very faithful. Puss always looked at him with favour. I hoped during our rambles together in the following summer that he would lead us at last to the cave where the Christmas trees are dressed. But he never did. Our parents often spoke of his late master as old Reuben, but children are not easily disabused of a favourite fancy, and in Paddy's thoughts and in mine, the old man was long gratefully remembered as Old Father Christmas. Okay, so that was Old Father Christmas. Oh, I have to unmute Katrina. Whoops, and now my headphones are falling off. So, yeah.
Mine fell off as well.
Yeah. I found that story quite early on, and I was originally thinking of doing it for our first Subday, but it was a bit too long for my throat that week. I almost had a voice fail, so
Yes, sometimes the vocal cords do not cooperate.
yeah, in particular when the weather suddenly turns cold, then my throat tends to be a bit sore. So yeah, but I'm glad I got to do it for this week, as I do think it's quite a cute story.
I think it is. Yeah. Father Christmas is allegedly very old.
Yeah,
Very old indeed.
definitely. 1,830 years old at the time of the story. So that's a notable age. Ah, hey Rattus Swedicus. Good to see you.
Hello. Yes. Aratus. Yeah. I think that's so cute. It's like they never mentioned Father Christmas's dog.
Yeah.
And you would have thought that would have been an important mention.
Yeah, you would. And I didn't even get into the picture. And also the concept of Father Christmas having a cave full of Christmas trees.
Yes.
And decorates them there and just brings them all decorated into the house. That is quite a concept.
Yes. That is how Christmas trees happen.
Apparently so.
Obviously, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't. My parents could never pretend that Father Christmas bought the Christmas tree. I was very much privy to them struggling to get that through the door.
Yeah.
Very much indeed.
Over here, the tradition is to decorate the tree with the family, so it was never a question of that here either. So, that was one of the favorite things on Little Christmas Eve.
Does Father Christmas have a Malamute? Sorry.
What is that?
I just got asked, does Father Christmas have a Malamute?
Yeah, what's a Malamute?
It's a type of dog.
Ah.
They're so big and fluffy.
Okay.
They're so big, so fluffy. I love them. I get really excited about really large, fluffy dogs. So I have to Google a Malamute. I can drop an image in the chat for anybody who doesn't know what a Malamute looks like.
Yeah.
They're like an even floppier husky. They're huge.
Yeah,
so huge.
I know the most common species of dogs, but I'm not an expert. And thank you for the diamond, Sparky, who is also a Spark. Sparky Spark. That was
video about Malamutes. But yeah, if anybody, I probably can't drop an image in the chat, but if anybody hasn't seen a Malamute, look up Malamutes. They're so fluffy.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much, Sparky.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
And thank you, Cigaretten. I'm not sure which one of us you're referring to, but I will thank you on behalf of both of us. Apparently.
Probably isn't me. I don't think it's me.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to comment any further. Apparently, the English Father Christmas have a Cocker Spaniel, so... oh, hey, Hearth and Hell. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yes. Yeah, and give those ladies a follow. They are great women and doing interesting work over there, so hop on over there.
Cozy streaming.
Yeah, definitely. They had a stream with Philosophicat earlier this week, I think. That is out on YouTube, so please go and check that out. It was an interesting talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but as I said, what?
I've forgotten what we were saying.
Yeah, we were talking about Santa's dog, and in England he has a Cocker Spaniel, so, and apparently it's very dirty as well.
Yeah. I wonder, like, if Santa actually had a dog in the can, then there would have also always been a dog at the grotto. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure Cocker Spaniel would do the best job of protecting the cave, but we would definitely make the best effort possible, I would say. And thank you again, Big Hair Tsunami, for gifting Horse and Helm with a subscription. That is very good of you.
Hey.
Our own Father Christmas over on D-Live.
Thanks, Sticks. Thanks for the lemons and ice creams.
Yeah, thank you. That is very generous. I got a question earlier in the chat from I agree about what a Nisse is, because in Scandinavia, Father Christmas have merged with the mythological creature Nisse. The origins of the Nisse is a bit mysterious. There are theories that it is an ancestral spirit that helps around the farm. The Nisse is a helpful creature who will help take care of, in particular, the animals of the farm. They love horses, so you could walk into the stable one morning and your horses, in particular the favorite one, would have braids in their tail and their mane. So that was the work of the Nisse. And also help around with other small chores on the farm. And if you displeased the Nisse, he would get up to mischief, in particular with misplacing stuff. So things would disappear and everything. And one of the most important things to do with the Nisse is to give him porridge on Christmas Eve with butter in the middle of the porridge. That is very important. So that is one reason for the Norwegian tradition of having rice porridge on Christmas Eve. Many let that sit and make itself ready in a duvet, actually, while they were at church, and then it would be ready because that would make the heat stay, and it was slowly cook until ready, so it was finished when you returned from church. And connected to that is having an almond in the porridge, and the one who gets the almond wins a prize, usually a marzipan pig. So yeah, but the Nisse, back to that. I'm not going to lose myself in Norwegian Christmas traditions.
Although they are very fascinating.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. It has merged with Santa Claus, so we call him julenissen in Norwegian and in Scandinavia. Yeah, Rattus Widicus, småfolket, the little people, are not dressed in red, their clothing are grey. That is very true. And also, if you give the Nisse new clothes, you have to be a bit careful, because he might actually find himself too nice, too good to continue to work for you on the farm. So you know, a little flashback to our fairies from last week. The same concept. But in certain times, the Nisse was considered tied to witches and pagans. So you could actually get in quite a bit of trouble if you were suspected to have a Nisse who helped you around on the farm, because that would indicate witchcraft. But still, the tradition kept on. They also went with the people into the cities when they moved in there, so it wasn't just on the farm. So and you know, Santa's little elves, they are little nisses in Scandinavia.
I agree as if the Nis is a purely pagan thing. I would say it sounds from what you say like lots of people in Norway engage in this tradition. Christians, secular, pagans.
It's an overall tradition these days. So while the roots may be pagan, it has merged with Christianity, and then secularly, I can't pronounce that word, so I'm not even going to try. The secular world, it's as common as Father Christmas and Santa Claus in other countries.
Yeah, that's interesting. Got to leave the Nissa. It's porridge.
Yeah, that is very important. Or else
we have heard. Or else he won't help you around the farm.
No, he won't.
Not nice.
Not even will he not help you, he will cause mischief. So, yeah, you gotta keep the Nissa happy.
We have indeed heard about the Nissa a little bit on the show before. I believe we blamed tech problems on them at one point.
Oh yeah, it's either the Nissa, it's either the Nissa or the Fae.
The Nissa or the Fae.
Yeah,
those are the two things most likely to be messing with the stream on any given day.
Yeah, I might try to dig some deeper into the origins and everything of the Nissa for a future episode.
Yeah, we could do a whole like Nissa episode at some point. Like, I don't know if there's enough on them for that, but we could have
at least a part of an episode could go to the Nissa.
A little bit of an episode.
Yeah, I'm sure I can find some stories with them as well.
It could be in with elf-like figures and house spirits.
Yeah,
might be an interesting one to look into.
Yeah, it definitely would. I saw a glimpse of a documentary a few years ago that was about deep in a Norwegian forest, and the narrator was talking like it was a fairy tale. So I almost expected to have him go, and now we come to the forest, Nissa, and how they live their lives. So that was a bit fun.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be cool to do mythical creature documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that is the stories we have for you tonight. And as said, this is our season finale, the end of season 1, and I'm actually quite sad about that.
Yeah, it's like end of like a little bit of an era. Like it's the end of the beginning.
Yeah,
really.
It is. I actually had to wipe a few tears earlier today because I'm a woman and I get emotional. So yeah,
it's really stunning. Just how much of a lovely community we have here.
Oh yeah,
It's brilliant.
yeah. You know, we have the best audience, and it's been hard work, but definitely a labor of love from my side. I've really enjoyed this, so looking forward to start again to on the new year.
Do very much enjoy this myself, and I like to put a lot of time into my research, and I just really hope to be getting stuff that's useful and informative and accurate for you guys, and I hope you learned from it. And I'd just like to say about Spark. Obviously we chose the follower, the subscriber named Spark because of us being Hearth of Europa and the sparks of a fire. But also I think it's very good metaphorically because we do want to ignite a spark of passion for European culture in everyone who follows us. And we hope that people who learn about folk tales from us will go out there and, you know, tell other people about the things they've found out. And, you know, spread the love for European folk tales even further among Europeans. Because we need to get back in touch with this stuff.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
You know, it's a valid point that we can't go back, but it doesn't mean we have to throw everything to the wayside. So,
No,
you know,
absolutely not.
culture and tradition die when people don't uphold it. So that's it. That is one of the things we want to do with this stream, is to retell the old stories so that people know them and remember them and enjoy them as have been done for thousands of years. And Hearth and Helm asked when we started. We had our premiere on September the 6th. So, and you can watch all of the episodes on YouTube. Please do forgive the bad audio at the beginning.
Yeah, the beginning was like audio was a massive thing.
Yeah.
And it might have been internet connection related or streaming preset related, but yeah.
It did help that I got a proper microphone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Get a proper microphone helps.
Yeah, it definitely does. So yeah, the learning curve has been very steep. I have literally felt my brain making new connections and growing and everything, so hopefully it doesn't grow past the limits of my skull.
when you're so big brained that your head explodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is quite big brained. So yeah, we have set on the date for our premiere of season 2. Do you have that available?
Yes. So I think we are coming back on the 17th. We are coming back on the 17th. And we are starting off our season with a 2-parter about the ultimate showdown, the final frontier of life, the end.
Yeah.
The big skull man.
Yeah.
Skull boy with the scythe.
Yeah, we're starting a new cycle by starting with death. So that should be interesting. And hopefully hopefully we will have
a lot of other themes, yeah.
Oh yeah, we have at least 2 months planned out already. So and still a few themes that isn't set to a date. So yeah, it should be another interesting season, and I'm really looking forward to it. So while I will enjoy a Christmas holiday, it will be a working holiday looking into all of this. So yeah.
We are going to try and read some stuff, get some solid research done over the holidays, because, well, it is fun to read stories. Really fun to read stories, whatever time of year it is. Oh yes, and we are going to be looking at maybe a pagan festival or two in the next year as well.
Yeah.
I know February got a bit of a significant one coming up.
Yeah, that's true. We got a question if we have considered joining Subscribestar. We haven't talked about it, but I have had a glimpse on it, so we will discuss that during Christmas,
Yes.
I think. We are hoping to get some mugs out, because,
Yeah.
you do need the proper
Eventually
beverage. You do need the proper beverage to really enjoy the stories. A cup of tea makes a story all that much better. So, yeah.
And you know whose tea.
Yeah.
You know whose tea we're going to recommend in those mugs.
Yeah.
Grandma Towler's.
Yeah, the lovely Grandma Towler. So, yeah, that is our plan so far. So,
Yes.
I think the only thing left is to say goodnight and wish everyone Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yes, indeed. Have a very Merry Christmas, a blessed Yule if you celebrate it, and a really Happy New Year. And thank you very much for being here with us this first season, so many of you.
Yeah, it's been an honor. So, thank you so much. And, you have to do the chest.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, we can do that before
Let's do
the
the
end.
chest.
The chest
we
before
can.
the end.
Right. How many? Put more lemons in the chest. Okay, let's put 200 lemons in the chest. We have... Wow. When did the lemons get so much? Oh, the 7,000 lemons. Wow. Thank you, people. Thank you.
We have a question on YouTube from Streaky Bacon. He wonders if we know about the story of Gellert. I don't know how to pronounce that. A dog from Wales that was killed by a prince by mistake.
I think it's ringing a bell,
Maybe
but I can't remember fully what it was.
Maybe we should have an episode on dogs.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
Animal episode.
Yay. Animal episodes. We
The
can have
stream.
an episode on dogs and one on cats, because I know you're more of a cat person.
Yeah.
Dogs.
I'm all in for an episode on dogs. Don't worry about that. I'm very fond of dogs. So yeah.
Dogs. I respect cats. Cats know what they want in life. Right,
Yeah.
let's open this chest.
Okay. Chest.
Your cat sometimes doesn't care if you're in the middle of the stream. Your
No,
cat's just like...
she usually prefers to get my attention when I'm streaming or when I'm moderating a stream or something. So, and she doesn't give up either. So, I want this, I want that. So, yeah.
Human, your human concerns are of no importance to me. Let me outside now.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I don't want to.
Well, geez.
So,
Do we
lemons
have the
have been given
winners?
out.
Oh.
We do. Sparky's got lemons. Sparky got 72 lemons. Rowdy Dude with 42 lemons. Rata Swedicus with 30 lemons. Moshe Finkelstein with 24 lemons. And Styx with 20 lemons.
Congratulations.
Thank you for all the lemons, everyone.
Yeah.
Styx, Moshe, and Cigaretten.
Yeah, and the ice creams. That is very much appreciated. So yeah, the only thing that remains is to play the end. And
Yes.
this is why I had to do the live reading of Thor and Loki. So I hope you will stay all through the end. I think it will be worth it. So yeah, good night everyone, and a Merry
Good night.
Christmas and a Happy New Year.